The heart of Helena, Montana is embodied on a street where the lifeblood of a community courses through the houses, buildings, and voices of the people. The heartbeat is authentic and unique, mature and time-worn. Rodney Street is the place. It's got a historic steeple and a lot of storied people. There are bungalows, apartments, and mansions of pink and purple. The trees are majestic in their maturity, and the people are unafraid to be who they are. It's a place that is comfortable and welcoming, no matter who you are, where you came from, or how long you plan to stay. And the drivers, the riders, and the walkers all come together at the laundry, gather at the general store, intersect at the bakery, commiserate in the convivial corner bar, or celebrate at the Myrna-Loy.
Rodney Street is simply alive. It had a feel, a look, and a language all of its own. It had history from the times of old. A rhythm ran through it as well, a beat, unique in and of itself. It was here where time moved slower than anywhere else in town. The people did as well. Some would say it maybe even had its own heartbeat. Physically speaking, it appears little more than a piss-poor, pothole-ridden paved alley, 3.5 miles long. It was a road where the solid yellow center line is only a suggestion, not a requirement. It ascended onto the mountainside of the South Hills, up Mount Ascension.
I think Rodney Street is the most urban area in Helena, and it's the most real part of Helena. It's where people can really embrace who they are in our community.
It's very eclectic, I guess is a good word for it for me. A 50-cent word with a cup of coffee, huh? But that's its beauty and its charm, and sometimes maybe a bit of its downfall, or it's when it gets a little careworn and tired. It's because it isn't always in fashion, but that's all right. As long it's a district of character and characters.
It feels real. It feels like home in some way, or it feels, there's just something that it's not manufactured or cookie cutter. There's life. Yeah. Just breathing through the ground and the buildings and how everything is structured together. That you feel like you kind of have just sort of been invited into somebody's home. Like the whole neighborhood is a home.
That neighborhood feels that way. It kind of embraces you when you walk in. Man,
and like one room may be totally messy. I may have clothes all in the closet on one room. Another may be super tidy, but that's just like a well put together home. It's got to have all that crazy stuff going on.
I feel like Rodney Street is it's just rad. I don't know. There's nothing like it.
Rodney Street is a quirky street ensconced in the middle of Helena. The street and the surrounding neighborhood have a uniquely independent spirit, bolstered by fresh stories from the new souls that reside, work, and play there. Stories that complement the tales of old souls that have walked throughout the area for over 150 years. Stories that are filled with character, love, dread, opportunists, entrepreneurs, and survivors. Every turn you take, you can see a survivor of something. They are legion, easy to spot, easy to approach and appreciate. Rodney Street runs right in the middle of Helena. It is a cultural and physical nexus of the city, situated between the downtown and the Montana State Capitol. Helena is a small city that approximately 32,000 call home, 70,000 plus if you account for all that utilize it daily in the surrounding Lewis and Clark County. You could call this rural America, but the modern technological era has rendered it increasingly less disconnected from the fast-paced world of urban America. Fast and slow America all share some of the same issues. America has always segregated itself into separate communities. You'd like to say that, yes, we've tried to tackle racial segregation and economic discrimination, but really, we have yet to come to grips with the human inclination to place people in tight little boxes. Today, socioeconomic segregation persists. Neighborhoods still have their undeclared, yet still binding exclusionary standards. We can only allow those in who can afford to be in. The land of opportunity was built by hard work, but outcomes of such efforts are not guaranteed. Some got ahead, while others barely got by, and in Helena, it was no different. The city was created by opportunists hoping that the richly endowed surrounding hills would deliver fortunes in their favor. It was about striking gold, which would lead to easier livelihoods, women and children slumbering without anxiety. The lust for gold was what brought people to Helena, Montana. They came in droves, and the rush included a quartet of Georgians who in 1864 found a rich vein in what became known as Last Chance Gulch. In the 1860s, this was Indian country. White miners were infiltrating, but everything changed drastically when the word got out that there was gold in them thar hills. People from all over the country found their way to Helena. The drive for easy pickings and the economic security was more or less the American way. Let's face it, some kids have always gone to bed with full bellies and others have not. We've never been adept at spreading the wealth, rather more than willing to segregate ourselves according to luck and financial circumstance. Today, Helena, like the rest of the nation, has its little neighborhoods where it is easy to gauge what sort of monetary resources finance that house, car, and boat, or no boat. But in every handsome town, there is an area where the conventional rules and standards don't apply. Rodney Street is just that kind of place. It has always been an area harboring a mixture of races, genders, religious beliefs, ages, and income levels. So how is it that Rodney Street exists as a special neighborhood in a small city in a big country, a place where somehow long-standing socioeconomic norms just don't apply?
And urban development over the last half century in this country has moved more and more towards segmented populations where we live in our own little niche, in our own little community, at the end of our road or sort of on our separate parcel, and then we drive in to do our thing and we leave. And we don't have necessarily those shared experiences. We don't encounter individuals who don't match our world in a lot of cases. And when you live in a place like Rodney, you can't avoid that. And if you don't like it, I guess you leave. But if you live there, I think it makes you a more complete individual, one way or the other.
The neighborhood is doing it right as it can be, where everyone has the right and freedom to be themselves. That freedom is what makes humans and life actually measurable with interest. And that is why people are drawn to this street. People have been drawn to this area since Helena's inception. Rodney Street got its name in 1868 from a fellow named Rodney Pocock, after he became the first recorded death in the city.
Rodney Pocock actually was a doctor. He was a medical doctor who came to Helena because, like a lot of people, he had lung problems. He had tuberculosis, which back then they called those people lungers. And he was a lunger because he was constantly coughing. And he came here because he thought that the mountain air was going to be good for his health, but he didn't realize the primitive conditions. And so he spent the first winter in a log cabin that was poorly chinked, and the snow would come in the cracks and cover his blankets. And he got worse and worse and worse, and finally in March of 1865 he died. He became the first person that made it necessary to have a cemetery. He was the first person buried in that Central School cemetery. And they created the cemetery, put it there because of him. And so he was buried there, and because of this dubious distinction of being the first person to die in Helena, Rodney Street was named for him.
The area that once housed the dead became the grounds for Helena's first grade school. The cemetery was relocated, and construction of the school began in 1875. In January of 1876, the school opened its doors and still operates as one of Helena's elementary schools. Right next door to Central School, you can see the Cathedral of St. Helena. It gracefully towers high over Helena. The cathedral was first imagined by the Diocese of Helena's first bishop, Bishop John Baptist Brondell. Bishop Brondell envisioned building a grand cathedral in place of the smaller Cathedral of Sacred Hearts of Jesus and Mary, which was located on South Rodney in the area known as Catholic Hill. That promontory hill housed many Catholic institutions. The diocese's second bishop, John Patrick Carroll, brought that vision to fruition, and the cathedral was built where it is now located in the neighborhood of its parishioners. It was modeled after the elegant votive Kirche in Vienna. The cornerstone was laid in 1908, and in June of 1924, construction was completed and the cathedral was consecrated. The majestic structure has stood tall and strong for well over 100 years, symbolizing the importance and value of the neighborhood it was built in.
We're part of the community. We don't stand apart from it, we're a part of it. There is acceptance that it is a sounding board, the cathedral of the neighborhood, I think, in many ways. So you can come here to shake a fist, or you can come here to fold your hands, either one of the two at times. Or you can be quiet or quite verbal, or you can sing. It's not everything for everyone. It's certainly not the Emerald City, and neither is Rodney Street. And I don't think it was ever meant to be. I think it was meant to be a thoroughfare of life, truly. Very ordinary, down in the trenches, hardworking, beautiful family molding life that a neighborhood generates. Yeah. Yeah, and it is symbolic of that.
So if we start out at Courthouse Square, I think that the courthouse, the Lewis and Clark County Courthouse, is probably the most overlooked landmark in Montana because it was actually built as the territorial capital. It's the only standing territorial capital building in Montana. Despite what they say about Virginia City, there's no real proof that there's anything in Virginia City that was actually used as a capital. So in 1886 or so, when the courthouse was built, Helena was the territorial capital, and this was built with that in mind. In 1889, when statehood happened, it became the state capitol, and it was the state capitol building until 1902, when the present capitol was finished. So it's important in that way, and that whole area is, typically historically it was a really, really busy place, and it's a very, very important area because it was always the place where the county courthouse was, even back to 1867. Courthouse Square was laid out as the place for the courthouse. So it became the place when the territorial capital moved to Helena. It became the place where lawyers and judges and any kind of a state or a territorial official, did business there.
Right next to the courthouse was the county jail. In the 1990s, the county jail was transformed into a community arts center named the Myrna Loy in honor of Helena's best-known movie star. The exterior has remained historically intact, while inside was completely renovated to serve the arts, performances, and movies. Courthouse Square has been left mostly intact, historically being a place where people of all walks of life congregated, from the lawyers, businessmen, workers, women, and children to the prisoners housed at the jail. Today, that mixture of people can still be found in the neighborhood. Some things really don't ever change.
But one thing that's cool about Rodney is that it's the scale, you know, and there's such a depth of stuff there. You know, there's 150 years worth of history there, and the bits are still standing. And there's every possible land use, you know, is somehow represented there. You know, from the courthouse to those bars to the restaurants, everything else, you know, all kinds of housing, and there's such a mix, and it is a very fine-grained mix, and the whole thing is held together because it's so walkable. You know, you can walk anywhere there, and there's all kinds of folks out there walking with you.
Historically, Rodney Street has always had a small business district, soda fountains, meat markets, general mercantile stores, and bars. Today, in the 2-block area, there's a laundromat, a store, a bakery, and a corner bar.
The businesses that are in it, like Grateful Bread and B&B and the laundromat, and that's, you know, it's just a pivotal like point in this area. And here, just where everybody gets to know each other and everybody sees the same people day in, day out, and become, you know, friends.
The neighborhood bar is in a building that was built in 1884. It was the Kench and Company Saloon. In 1939, the space became the Jester's Bar and has been a neighborhood gathering space ever since.
I think that Jester's is a really pivotal business and place for all walks of life to congregate and meet people. It's got a great music scene. It makes the Rodney Street much more colorful when it comes to community.
For years now, Rodney seems to have stood still in arrested development and in transformation. The place has been thought of a bit seedy, sketchy even, but the neighborhood is much more than sketch. So what is it, and what will it become?
Every place has its own sense of place, and so being able to sort of examine those, really talk about what is it that stands out to us in those films, and how do they track with our experiences here in Helena. How do they track with different neighborhoods and communities in Helena, each of which have their own character. And I think within those, Dennis had mentioned sort of thinking about preservation and urban development as the city continues to evolve. You know, considering these things about sense of place, I think they're often overlooked in development in the larger schemes. There's space and place, and space, to me, when we were talking about this, is kind of more abstract and void of meaning in some sense, but when you roll into place, it's packed with meaning. And where is that meaning coming from? And every person is going to have their own contributions and thoughts about what that might mean. And is there a shared sort of sense of place that we have here in the community?
For years now, 20 years, maybe 25 years, Rodney Street's in transition. Okay, what are we transitioning from and to? What? You know, that's the question. How, where, what, I don't know. I do have a little crystal ball. I always like to gaze into it, but Rodney Street is a difficult one. You know, there are certain, if you think about it, there are certain aspects of it that will always keep it where it's at, you know. And, you know, until those things change or change hands, it's not gonna, you know, and it's gonna take, you know, a huge injection of cash to do that. And I just don't see anybody doing that, you know. So where it's gonna stay is, you know, this eclectic little neighborhood up from downtown that has, its seedy little vibe that, if you go through there, well, they let you, in a way that's not true, but, because the people here are just so good. They really are. Rodney Street has its own beauty, really, really does. And I don't know. I don't know where it's going to go. I really don't. I try to look at it, and what I want for it is, to change, but to stay the same. I don't want it to change. It's good what it is. People love it. They really do.
Rodney Street is a comfortable zone of town where the people don't want its independent character to change, where the people have to change or who resides there has to be filtered out. That must remain the same. That is what gives it uniqueness. That's what gives it color. It isn't beige walls, it is risky colors, colors that stand out. And that is where it is at, bringing out the colors. Instead of changing Rodney's diversity, constricting diverse characters into little boxes, but rather letting them shine and show their colors out in the open, on the street, on the houses, in the business district. Exploring a neighborhood that doesn't want change, doesn't want to change the fact that everyone can and will be included, but it is in need of some kinds of improvements.
I want to see how Rodney develops as a continual neighborhood in its sort of independent space, but not flip over into, a lot of sort of new urbanism designs really just means like yuppie playgrounds, not, and sort of characterless. And so I don't know, that's what I want to see. And it's hard and it's messy and it doesn't work well in most places. So it's going to take a lot of effort to do it.
I hope that it can still be a community where people who need affordable housing that's just not there. I mean, not like, or people in transition, that they have a place to live and can afford a place to live. I don't know, that is that feeling of we don't want it to change because of what it is. So that's a real conundrum of how do we maintain a place that is so important. I would hope that there's a way to provide what people need in whatever their walk of life is.
The residents want Rodney Street to be a place for people of all walks of life, a place where people can move into, whether you are new to the area, coming up from nothing, and it can be a place for a fresh start. It is an inviting street that is eclectic, without a recalibrated social or economic order to it. Doctors and lawyers live here. The guy that just got out of the homeless shelter and is trying to get a leg up lives here.
And I've seen people who, self-included, have come up from being homeless to actually, getting their feet on the ground, and actually having Rodney Street, for me personally, has actually helped me with that, and had helped me put myself, into a decent living situation, and making sure that we're all taking care of each other. I can't count how many times that Charlie Carson's definitely been like, hey man, you're doing awesome, and I see it, and it's cool like that. It's got that sense of family and care, we all care about each other and we look after each other in different ways.
It is like a fine line you're walking, because I would not really like it, I don't think, if Rodney got super fancy and had the boulevards like they were planning with the fancy street lamps, and all of that just seemed really not us, not this neighborhood. But I think it would be cool to see more public art. I've always wanted to see like the buildings on, especially these 2 blocks that are businesses, be covered in mural paintings on the outside, more color, more vibrancy that kind of reflects the diversity of the neighborhood.
I wouldn't want it to lose its character, as you say, maybe beautify. Every time I drive down Rodney Street, though, I think they ought to fix it right away. I mean, get that street, repaved and get the bumps out of it a little bit, that sort of thing. So that would be, I think that would help the whole neighborhood a lot, just to improve that. But as I say, I mean, you don't really, at least I wouldn't want to see it become, say, gentrified or something, like there happens in cities where they start tearing down the old buildings and putting in new, more expensive buildings, driving out the current residents, that sort of thing.
The city of Helena has shown the value of the neighborhood by injecting funds for improvements. For months, 5 blocks of Rodney were under construction. Those mounds of dirt turned into smoother roads, new sidewalks, and new streetlights. Old trees were cut down and others pruned. It had to be, as so many of the trees were barely holding on to their limbs, and many crashing to the ground every time the Montana winds struck. The residents continue their plea for no gentrification. They don't want to lose Rodney Street's heart and soul and the freedom to have a unique collective expression. They'd rather just brighten up the place.
I think it's an opportunity to show people that don't really come to this part of town that it is a nice part of town. It's not just, I feel like it has a reputation of being a little bit grungy or whatever, but so I think some of those things will brighten it up a bit. But not that I don't like it how it is, but it'll be nicer to have some of those road improvements and just like general, like when you look out, it'll be a little, like greenery and all of that kind of stuff, brightening up the place a little bit.
Rodney Street has brightened up a bit with all the new improvements and new public art installations that have popped up, exhibiting its existing eclectic vibe while painting the sense that all can continue to make a home there. People do not want that to change.
This is a little quote that defined what I did here. And I think I feel comfortable here. I feel comfortable on Rodney Street. I love to shop in the little shops. Like the Grateful Bread, I'm grateful that they're there now and that they were able to get through the pandemic's worst days. But you just see people out and about and they seem comfortable and not stressed and, at ease kind of. Yeah, so there's just a sense of that. And it's probably in everything. I'm very much into energy work, and I think there's an energy in this area. It has to go back to the history. Been here a long time. And so, yeah, we can add to it.
I think that Rodney Street is flush with people that walk both sides of the tracks, so to speak. I feel like when you grow up around here, whether you're affluent, whether you have money, whether you don't have money, if you see the faces that you see on Rodney Street every day, you're family. You're a part of the group, at least. I mean, even the patrons that we see up at B&B, the patrons that we see in here, it's all walks of life, but we all flock to Rodney Street. It's for some reason has that draw on his home.
It's like a comfortable old shoe. It really is. It's just like this nice feeling, for me. And it's just comfortable. I just enjoy it. I mean, you never know what's going to happen here. It's free entertainment every day. You just don't know.
The flavor of Rodney still attracts people. The future of Rodney will obviously bring some change. Everything changes. But Rodney is a bit more resilient than other places. history has proven that it will always remain a neighborhood for everybody.
They had a lot of sacrifices. I think that's something that the district can teach us, the value of sacrifice. Not having it all at once and not all for me, that you have to share and be patient and wait and let it grow like the mustard seed grows.
Rodney Street has weathered the times. It continues to exhibit its independent spirit, flush with characters. The soul of Rodney Pocock still breathes life into his old neighborhood, his essence contributing to the unique heartbeat of this place. A place to survive, a place to get by, a place to start fresh, a place to call home.